It's a wonderful setting of the words we're about to hear from the Gospel according to Matthew. Reading the beginning now of the 5th chapter. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Holy wisdom, holy word.
Thanks be to God.
I invite you to walk with me for a moment down a street where things are not really as they seem. It's a street in an unknown but very familiar city. I've literally driven down the street, but in reality, it doesn't exist. You've probably been there, but only through a screen somewhere. If I could have walked down this street, and if you'd been with me, we would notice several things. We would have seen tall, old apartment buildings, row houses, with porch steps leading up to the front doors and maybe rows of mailboxes. There'd be some storefronts with neon signs, maybe a theater marquee, a granite-faced church on the corner, old-fashioned streetlights on the curbs, and every block has a red fire plug. And yet, as we walk, something strikes us as kind of odd, and that is that for a city, there are no people besides us. We can see for several blocks, but see no one. No one sitting on porch stoops. Nobody strolling the sidewalks. Have you guessed where we are? California, Hollywood, Universal Studios and its Main Street movie set. Everything we see there is a facade. On the tour, I was driven down a street that's been there for decades, but it isn't real. If you've seen a few movies or watched some TV, you've seen the street filled with cars and actors and extras, artificially lighted and filled with sound effects that imitate car horns and footsteps and maybe a radio blaring from the fire escape, the roar of the subway from a street grate in the sidewalk. It's a wonderful illusion and very entertaining as Elliot Ness speeds down toward a speakeasy or Superman leaps from a tall building in a single bound, or a tree grows in Brooklyn. The pavement is real, but the rest is facade. Elaborate fronts of homes or churches or stores propped up by rough lengths of wood, lumber that's hidden from the camera range. The world has paid billions of dollars to be fooled by this facade, a marvelous escape from life's routine or life's disappointment or anxiety. And how we do escape. Movies, TV, music, sports, hobbies, computer games, the internet. And it's okay. It's healthy. It's good for us to escape, to a point. The problem is, in this electronically mediated age, that some folks have walked so far down imaginary roads of escape that they've lost touch with what is real and what's authentic and true. Let's change the channel. Look, it's the Super Bowl, number 54, the championship game. It's football on the face of it, but mostly, as everyone knows, It's a cultural thing. Super Bowls are often notoriously disappointing athletic events, but we pretend that this is the game of the year. And if it were played at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, some of you would have a difficult decision to make. And some of you wouldn't. Among the cultural idols we worship is the game. I have a book by a professor of art history at the Rhode Island School of Design. Gregor Geffels is her name. In the book called The Electronic Golden Calf, she looks back to 1985, to a Super Bowl Sunday when several cultural icons collided through an unusual coincidence of the date. And it wasn't the groundhog and the Super Bowl and Communion Sunday. No, it was the day of Ronald Reagan's second inauguration. And in Geffels' view, the whole day seemed liturgically orchestrated. Viewers were taken from one sacred event to another, and by the miracle of technology, two sacred places, the White House and the Super Bowl stadium, were united. In the White House, President Reagan tossed a coin, arguably another icon, to start the game across the continent. He ceremoniously opened the event that symbolizes to many the value of competition and the importance of being number one. Standing before a large landscape of the American West, Ronald Reagan seemed to personify the heroic image of a winner. How tempting it is to value life according to appearances, to judge what has meaning by considering only what you can see on the face of it. How tempting it is to look at an outward expression and mistake it for an inner reality. It's a little like going to someone's 25th wedding anniversary and judging the quality of their marriage by their choice of the cake or the decorations or the music. Or like judging the faithfulness of a church by its architecture or its size or the number of meetings it can tolerate in a month's time. Or judging a university based on how one alumnus does on Jeopardy. Outward appearances, the most attractive facades, can hide an empty spirit, the way a smiling face can hide a sad heart. The lessons read from the scriptures this morning harmonize to warn the people of God that they should not be confused or intimidated by appearances or by the superficial value of the culture that surrounds us. Values that do, let us admit it, reach into the life of congregations and eat away at faithfulness and undermine faith. Let's take another walk. Let's walk up the mountain with Jesus and his disciples and the crowds. And as he teaches, we find the difference between the facade of religion and the true wisdom of the emerging kingdom he talks about. His teachings may sound as foreign to us in our time as they did to his disciples back then. The prevailing wisdom held that it was the rich in spirit for whom the kingdom of heaven was meant. God's comfort was with those who were surrounded by their healthy and happy families. Blessed were the powerful, because they would get theirs and yours and everybody's. Blessed were those who were proud to have gotten what they deserved, for they had earned it. In the ancient Near East and in the contemporary culture of the West, on the surface, God's rain is certain to fall on the unjust, and God's sun is going to shine on the people of righteousness. Only on the just, on the saint, on the financially secure, the morally smug, and the politically powerful. That appears to be the case until Jesus assumes the position of the rabbi, sits down, and teaches the God-honest truth. God is a God who cares about the poor in spirit, the humble, those who are so hungry for justice they can taste it, the merciful, the peacemakers, and the persecuted. God will not abandon them the way the world does. In the world, they don't count, but in the kingdom, they are counted as God's own. The Beatitudes continue to be surprising and unbelievable because we still believe that the way things appear is the way things are supposed to be. But Jesus says, no, let God have God's way. Listen carefully, you who are in spiritual poverty, you who sorrow over such deep loss, you on the lowest rungs of the ladder. Yes, you have God's favor. In reality, you are blessed. I'm afraid that later this evening, the message of Jesus will be lost in the competitive noise of the Super Bowl's very creative and entertaining television commercials. They say that commercials anyway only appeal to about 7 things. That is, whatever the product is, it touches 7 parts of human need. Rather than breaking up into small groups, let me tell you what they are. They are images of eternal youth, wealth, security, fun, sex appeal, physical strength, and good health, vigorous good health. Though this product has not been assessed by the FDA and is not intended to cure any disease. The commercials will tell us what to drink, drive, devour, and depend on. Now, if the church just had a few $1 million, we could buy 30 seconds of time, maybe with James Earl Jones's voice, and we could have a paraphrase of the Beatitudes as our spot. And we could use Eugene Peterson's very creative paraphrase in the message and scroll these words on the screen as Barney Big Voice reads them. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and God's rule. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. What a message right there on TV for all to see. Suddenly, every other message would only be skin deep. But then again, it's not as if the message of Jesus finding its way into the heart, this message, it's not as if it hasn't been around for a while. It's been read, it's been proclaimed, it's been preached, it's been pondered for almost 21 centuries. So maybe our 30-second spot wouldn't have as much impact as the guy on the 50-yard line holding up the sign that says John 3:16. Besides, the truth is that Jesus' primary audience of blessed ones may not be watching the game anyway. They'd be the ones at work. They'd be the ones maybe too sick, or too sick with loss to care about a game, or too poor to have a TV, or in jail, or busy making peace where conflict is so intense that no one knows there's a game on. See, the Beatitudes aren't a call to action, like become poor in spirit so you can be blessed, mourn so God will bless you, get meek. No, the word from Jesus is a word of comfort and reassurance for those who are already what the Beatitudes describe. God's grace and love break through, and those who are hungry and those who mourn know something the world can't figure out, and that is that they are blessed. Walter Brueggemann, who's never had an unpublished thought, says that the Beatitudes conjure futures that have been closed off, and they indicate possibilities that have been defined as impossibilities. That is, Jesus is announcing a hope that's heavy and hard, not a flimsy facade, not sentimental cosmetic, but a sturdy, rich, deep down hope for those who are denied security, prevented from fullness, or have no reason to laugh or to celebrate life, whether they're in high school or in their later years. Let's walk back to where we started a few minutes ago, that movie set, the street you've never visited but you've seen so often. Remember the church that I mentioned on the corner. It's not a real church, of course, just a facade. And I wonder how many churches are like that church. A false front, propped up by flimsy supports of empty traditions, tired creeds, shallow faith. Maybe some churches were once vital and sturdy structures, full of covenant promises and pillars of faith. But maybe as people passed from the scene, they took a little bit of that church with them as they left, until all that was left of the body was a front. Or maybe the church had lost its focus and centered more on its own needs rather than the needs of its neighbors. See, what makes me think that is I'm thinking now about the Micah passage. Israel in the time of Micah was just plain unfaithful. Having forgotten all that God had done for her, she had almost forgotten to whom she belonged. And when through the prophet God complains, as God is wont to do to the prophets, Israel is almost sarcastic in her reply. What do you want from me? How about if I bow down before you? How about a burnt offering? Would you like that? How about a year-old calf? At first, there's a list of realistic offerings, things that would have the appearance of trying to restore a relationship to God. But Micah paints a more cynical, almost sardonic response that Israel might offer. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? How about 10,000s of rivers of oil? Or my firstborn? Is that what you want, Yahweh? What does God require? Anything from simple burnt offerings to a beloved child? Micah's answer centers on the essential themes of the prophets, indeed, the themes of all of biblical religion itself. And there are no surprises here. God has shown you what is good. Well, maybe there is a surprise that no thing is good. Israel is still thinking of keeping up appearances by offering commodities, stuff that might please other gods, but not the God of Israel. What God requires is a certain way of life, an ethic that defines Israel, that fulfills the church, and that gives meaning and purpose to human life. Do justice. Earlier in his prophecy, Micah has shown what happens when justice is not lived. The powerful oppress the powerless. Laborers are exploited. Courts are corrupt. To do justice means to establish equity for all, to treat one's neighbor as a covenant partner, and to keep God's will as they understand it from Torah. Today, we might say that to do justice is simply to do the right thing, but everybody doesn't know what's right, right? Not anymore. The church that offers more than a facade models what is right, justice, day by blessed day, living out God's justice and mercy so that future generations will know how to do what God requires. Love kindness. Kindness is a wonderful word and a much needed trait in our world, but what this requirement is all about is more than just being nice. In the Hebrew, there's a strong element of loyalty. That is being faithful in our relationships to one another. Here's our version of God's steadfast love, fidelity to and solidarity with one another. We love kindness because we love one another. And then, either as a third dimension or as a way of summing up the first two, walk humbly with God. One Hasidic interpretation says to walk secretly with God, meaning, I suppose, to draw no attention to yourself. The adverb, though, gently, is not as important as the word walk. That word stands for the whole orientation of your life, the ethic of justice and mercy step by step, a daily attitude that celebrates our relationship to God. It's our comfort to walk with God. The psalmist knew our sojourn isn't alone. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, you're with me. It's our vocation to walk with God. Jesus called his disciples saying, "Follow me, walk with me." It's our life to walk with God. Paul urged the Ephesians to walk in love and walk as children of light. Here at last is what is real. Here is authentic life. Here's what we're to be about, to refocus our lives, leaving behind all that's counterfeit and false-hearted and faithless, not to live lie by lie, but to live each day in justice and mercy and love. It's a bold idea for the life of faith. And today, it's super bold. Did you see what I did there?